I am the famous American. Actually, no, I need to start opening my videos by saying, I am the USA man, because that's the new thing I'm putting in my titles, because more people will watch the videos if I say USA man, because it signals to my potential demographics who might watch a guy like me. We want to see this guy who looks like he should be from Spain, but clearly has the mindset and the accent of some guy living in the United States. We want his perspective on reality. So yes, USA man, it sells, I'm gonna do it. So let's check out a video I recently made that was called USA man says race is a fascinating social construct, ... because you are watching these videos. Yeah, that's the thing, it's so funny. People will leave these comments like, why are you so obsessed with race? And I'm thinking, why are you searching YouTube for videos about race? That's always what I'm thinking. Yeah, it is a fascinating thing for a lot of people, and I know that, and I serve as a talk show host. That's all I am. I'm not the man with the answers. I'm just the man talking for 5 to 10 minutes, because YouTube rewards me if I have it wants me to have certain 5-minute videos and then certain 10 ones, so that I show up in people's suggested feeds. And then like, who's that guy that's always in all the videos? Let me watch him. And then people typically don't like me, but they watch me anyway. That's kind of how YouTube works. All right, so here's a comment from Guillermo, and he's talking, so just to be clear, the video had mentioned that here in the United States, the reason we're overly aware of race and ethnicity is because we have to constantly fill out forms for our government, for our employers, for surveys. What is your race and what is your ethnicity? So for me, white, Hispanic is what I put on there. It's up to you to put however you identify, but that is a fact. That is what I am. I learned that through a process of figuring that out. And it's funny because our United States government does not perceive Hispanics as white. So that's an interesting thing. Like, where do we get that concept? See, maybe Hispanics are white, but here in the United States they're not. Why? Because the government tells us they're not. Because if you check white, it says in parentheses, not Hispanic. So therefore I have to do one that's white race and then another one for ethnicity and put Hispanic. That's how our government brainwashes us to do that. So there you go. So I also mentioned though in that video how we have a program in place to help prevent minorities from being discriminated against, especially in the hiring process for getting a job. If you have 5 white men that are very qualified for a job and 1 black man who's just as skilled as the white man and just as qualified, then really the company needs to hire the black man or the Asian man or the Hispanic man over the white. So that's the understanding to avoid discrimination. That's how our laws and expectations are set up in so many ways. So I was talking about that, and then Guillermo left a comment and he said, isn't it discriminatory against white people? See, some people would say that. But then I got another comment actually a few minutes ago, and they said, well, actually, doesn't that benefit white Hispanics? Both great questions. I mean, I just told you that I identify as a white Hispanic. So imagine this. We have in that same law that you cannot discriminate against someone for gender, race, ethnicity, etc. You also cannot discriminate against people under the age of 40 because of their age. So here's what's funny. I'm 39, just turned 39. So at where I work, if they wanted to discriminate against me because I was too old because I'm 39, they could. Or if I was too young because I was 39. Either way, they could discriminate against my age because I'm 39. But in less than a year, I'll turn 40. And at that point, they cannot discriminate against me because I'm in a protected class of being age 40. So that's interesting. But I will tell you this. When I was filling out the paperwork a couple years ago for my job, I had to self-identify my race and ethnicity. And I was honest. I put white Hispanic. That's how I identified, because it's true. So what's funny is I'm already in a protected class anywhere I work. And when I fill that form out, I'm in a protected class because I am truly Hispanic. 1/4 of my DNA goes to southern Mexico. They got off the train 100 years ago in 1920. They came in from Michoacan. So by default, because of that, something completely out of my control 100 years ago, I am considered Hispanic by default. But I'm definitely white, because of my dad's side of the family, mainly German and British. So with that, because of that, I am white, I am Hispanic, but the government sees them as two different things. But by default, I'm in a protected class as a minority. So like the other question I saw come through today, so does that mean if you're a white Hispanic, you've got an extra advantage? Yes, and it kind of seems racist, doesn't it? It's like, hey, I'm a minority because I'm not white, but also I'm white. So you have to pick me because I'm the minority, but I'm white anyway. So, and that's the thing when we get so technical with all of this and ways to try to prevent discrimination against race, we end up in these interesting little scenarios. So it's funny, so a year from now, I'll be in two protected classes. I'll be a minority because of my ethnic background, and I'll be because of my age, I'll be 40. So I'll be double protected as if that were a thing that I would need to worry about. But yeah, it's really interesting because in an attempt to not discriminate, we kind of do discriminate against the majority. And as I recently made a video, in enough time, the majority, white Americans, will no longer be the majority. It'll be the minorities that make up more of our population. So that's going to be interesting when that changes at some point. Then actually, are we going to have to reverse the thing about who is no longer protected and who is, and who we're trying to not discriminate against? So here's what my personal opinion on it is. I think compared to all the horrible history that we've had in the United States and all the horrible ways that especially Black and Hispanic men specifically have been discriminated against, even when you look at who's in our prisons, who's more likely to be arrested, who's more likely to end up going to jail, who's more likely to serve longer terms, it's Hispanic and Black men. So we still have that going on, and that's a tragedy. And this should not be happening in 2020. But it is still happening. So I think overall, attempts to give opportunities to minorities is a good thing, and it's coming from the heart in the best way it can. But it's not a perfect science, so in the process, you're going to have situations where, in theory, white people can be discriminated against because they're white. And then you can have someone who's both and is already if I were going to be favored because I'm white, got it. If I was going to be favored by default because I'm a minority, got it. So that's kind of a mess, but that's how it is. And I always want to remind my viewers, especially outside the United States, why are we so focused on race and ethnicity in the United States? I've spent 8 minutes explaining a whole process. If you lived here with that mentality, and that was the law, and that was the rules, you can imagine you would be very aware of race and ethnicity. Not to look down on people because of it, but to understand there's a whole story built into that. There's a whole identity built into that. There's no such thing as being colorblind. Our race and ethnicity has some effect on our identity, typically, because I've mentioned before, or we could have a white couple that adopts, a minority baby. They raise it, it's culturally white. Or you could, even in theory, do that. You could have an Asian couple who raises a white kid, they adopt them and raise them that way. Don't see a lot of that, but what I'm saying is you can change the cultural identity here in the United States in a subset, and we have to be aware of how that works. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it's really interesting how American culture is largely based on this, and we can't just stop being this way. We need to be able to celebrate our identity and our race, but not if we're white. See, that's funny. I will close on that note. It's like you can't celebrate being white except for Columbus Day, celebrating an Italian. What was the deal? He was Italian, sent here by Spain to discover the United States, even though people had been living here for at least 10,000 years. So that's a joke. But it's a way for white people to celebrate. Hey, here's when the Europeans came and discovered the natives in America. Like, that's, I guess, a white holiday. I think it's a complete joke. And then we've got St. Patrick's Day, which I'm like 0% Irish, but all I have to do is wear a green and suddenly I'm celebrating St. Patrick's Day. So I guess Columbus Day and St. Patrick's Day are about the only ways you can, quote, celebrate being white. Otherwise, you're racist. You're racist if you celebrate being white. Other than those two subtle holidays, you can totally celebrate being a minority, and you should. People expect it, but never celebrate being white. I think it's interesting. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it. I'm just saying it exists. You wanted a window into American culture in the USA. I'm giving it to you. I don't have to agree with how things are here. I can admit they are this way, and we can have a conversation on that. Your comments belong right here.